Don Shroyer, United States Army Air Corps, World War II. Don is one of the many World War II veterans I interviewed and featured in my 9th film, Lest They Be Forgotten, Las Vegas, which we premiered in Cook County, Nevada. It was 2009, 45 interviews, and it made up that amazing story that I put together out there. A lot of fond memories of that, but I got to meet Don and others at that time. It was in Las Vegas, September 30th, 2007 is when I interviewed Don. He was a bomber pilot, a B-24 senior pilot, flew 36 missions, received the Distinguished Flying Cross and 11 other medals. Folks, in my book, he's a hero. He flew over the Battle of the Bulge and tells an amazing story from the air, which is also featured in my 12th film, The Battle of the Bulge. So Don's not with us anymore, but his story lives on. I want to thank Billy Grimes again for sponsoring a story of mine. Billy, God bless you. Thank you in honor of your grandfather, who also was a World War II bomber pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Alfred Jack Askey with the United States Air Force. And you're sponsoring this video in honor and his memory. So thank you, Billy. God bless you. I appreciate you so much. Folks, I'd like to encourage you to sponsor one of these stories. There's information in the video description underneath this video. On my website, larrycapetto.com, click on the link that says Sponsor a Vet. You'll see pictures of my veterans, some of them. Just click on a story that you'd like to share, like you'd like to sponsor, and include their name in the sponsorship. That's all you have to do. It's really easy. And if you'd like to donate to my work, you can do so by going to the comment section on these videos. And I encourage you to comment on the videos too, folks. I get a lot of comments about how come there's not 200,000 subscribers on this channel, you know, and I ask the same question. I don't know. But we need to share the stories and get the word out there, folks. History is best learned from those who are there. We've got the real thing. We've got the stories, unrehearsed, just raw human emotion coming forth. A lot of you have been so touched. I've had families healed. I've had people reunited. I've had the most amazing comments of how people have understood their loved ones that had PTSD because of these stories, these interviews, who came home and didn't understand them, and now they're understanding what they went through. So through a consensus of all these many stories. So it's a great project. Get involved with this. I have some other information, some news that I want to share at some point about how we can continue doing this on another platform. So, but anyways, it's wonderful to be here today. I thank God that we can honor our veterans, and we'll go forth doing so. Subscribe to the channel, folks. Share these videos. Let's keep this thing going. Our kids need to hear these stories. This should be mandatory showing in all schools, like a lot of you have said. So let's do it, man. God bless you. Why did you decide? You figured you're going to go anyways, or?
No, I joined the club. Everybody was going. I knew it was inevitable. So I said, this is the way to go. And
you picked the Army Air Corps? What did you?
Yes. At that time, if you had 2 years of college, they'd put you through, and I thought, might be more fun there than down there.
Where'd you go to flight school?
All through Texas.
Did you?
First one was in, can't remember.
That's okay. But did you want to be a pilot from the get-go? I mean, you wanted to fly?
Yes, yeah.
Anybody in your family ever fly, or what was the attraction? Just to be up in the air versus the ground?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
I was going with a girl and she liked the uniform.
That makes perfect sense. I think that's perfect. A year and a half later, you're flying in combat and going, what the hell did I do now?
I tell you.
Oh, that's great. So at what point were you shipped overseas, and what type of aircraft were you flying?
B-24, and I flew it over. That was kind of fun too.
Give me just a little bit of information about a B-24 versus maybe a 17 or a 29.
Okay. B-17 was a 4-engine bomber pilot, or form, and it was very intricate. They couldn't build them fast enough. They were too good. So they said, let's get a bomb truck, put some wings on it, and go for it. They also were elevated with a little tail drag back here. When they went to put the bombs in, it was crazy because they were going like that. So they said the new one has to be like that, put it up like that. They wanted to have something that flew faster than the 51, higher, speedier, carry as much or more. Introduced a new wing called the Davis airfoil so that we could pack more in. The real tough time is taking off. You're loaded with 2,000 gallons of gas. You got 10 500-pound bombs. You got 9-man crew. You got all the weight of the guns and the ammunition. So takeoff time was very precarious, especially if you were in Italy, where I was, because of the olive trees. We almost just skimmed them over them as we were taking off.
So how fast does a B-24 go before you take off?
About 120.
120 miles
120
an hour?
miles an hour.
Okay.
And you don't go like a jet. You go 125, 130. That's the scariest time, taking off and landing, and flak.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, you're the senior pilot, the flight commander on the plane?
Senior pilot. I got a co-pilot. I have a navigator, bombardier, 4 Army. Then I had tail gunner, 2. Underneath, 2. On open windows, 2. 1 up above, 2, and 1 in the nose, 2.
How many missions did you fly?
36.
And between what month and year, and how many months did that span?
Pretty much September through April.
Of 40...
44, 45.
September 44 to April 45?
Yeah.
And what are your targets? I mean, or what campaigns were you a part of too?
Well, I can show you, I've got a list of all my missions.
So there's a lot there, huh?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Out of all those missions, was there one that was tougher than the others, or were they all tough?
No, well, they were all tough, but one, Odertal, and this is when we were bombing really far north during the Battle of the Bulge. I'll get to that later. But number 3 engine is a very important engine because it handles all the hydraulic stuff. The guy down below, if we hit it, you can't pull him up except crank him up and stuff like that. But that's what I worried about in Odertal. We were really lambasted. The flak burst fairly close to us. Number 3 engine was out. Another engine was on. They could see gasoline coming out, which is horrible for us because in Italy, I was located near the spur of Italy. And in order to get to our enemy, we had to go over the Adriatic Sea and over the Alps. So if you get hit way back in there and you're losing gasoline and you're on 3 engines, can you make it back over the Alps? If you can, I felt safe. I could die. We could all just go out in parachutes on the Adriatic. Somebody'd pick us up. So Odertal is the one.
Were you ever shot down?
Never shot down.
Did you lose friends or crews that were around you, probably, obviously?
Oh, a lot of crew. I was lucky. I came through it.
I hear a lot of airmen were prisoners of war. I mean, thousands of them. I mean, that's incredible numbers. But is that the truth? I mean, you.
Oh yeah, I wrote those down. It's terrible.
I've talked to some that were fighter pilots or what have you, and their experiences, like crash landing, prisoners of wars, and but anyway, so you were fortunate. Why do you think you made it back, and a lot of guys never did?
Luck. Oh, maybe there was. Yeah. Let me tell you what flak is.
Sure, do it.
Now, what they did, what the Germans got smart, they couldn't shoot up 25,000 feet and be accurate. So they said, let's make a box. It's 1,000 feet this way and 1,000 feet this way and 2,000 feet that way, a box. They would shoot a big shell about like that and about this big around, and they would just try to get in that area, have it burst, and they covered that much of an area. So they would shoot up and they would just like that. Flak is about this size, and just hundreds of them in that box. So when they found out somehow how high the planes were and about where they would be when the box would go up there and burst in that box area.
What's ack-ack? Is that a gun or is that a sound or what?
Ack-ack?
Yeah.
It's just them, no, that's something else.
Okay. So when you're flying along, you got bombs, you're doing bombing, are you flying in formation? You got a bunch of...
We're flying in formation. I got pictures of that for you. Usually there would be 28 planes, and there would be one, and you would fly on his, if I was in the here, I'd fly on his wing. One underneath here, and one flying on my wing and a tail. So there'd be 7 in a little group, 4 groups, and we'd all go together. 28.
You're all talking to each other on the radio? Is it
No.
central?
Pilot would talk only if necessary, and the one leading would be the big boy. For instance, in Odertal, where I really got hit, it was a cloud cover, and we couldn't drop our bombs because we couldn't see where they were. But it looked like it would clear up. So he was the one that was in charge. And he said, we're going around, we're going to try it again. And that's where I had trouble turning because I had already lost one engine. We feathered the prop of that one. When you're going like that, you're digging. If you don't, you do like that so it's not pushing at all. So you're not holding it back.
So that's what feathering the prop means?
Feathering the prop means going like that rather than go like that.
Okay. Can you, we've talked, or your message about the Battle of the Bulge, can you give me this historically, what the Battle of the Bulge was, the objective of the Germans, and then your involvement?
Okay, on the ground, the Germans, we were going good, and the Germans were having problems. They made a decision that they had to do it. They had to get us, they had to stop, and they had to get to some bridges back over here that we had gone over. So they had made one big bulge push, and the bulge itself was a town, and it was surrounded by Germans, but the Germans and Americans were all along the borderline. The fog, whatever you call it, had stopped everything from coming out of the 8th Air Force and British and the French Air Force. The German fighters were coming in and really getting the ground troops, and it was tough. So they said, you guys in Italy, you got sunshine, and you can fly. So what we did, that was the 15th Air Force, 15th Air Force. So what they did was put extra gas in, as much ammunition as you could get, and said, now you go bomb oil refineries because the tanks are waiting for that stuff. You go up there and you've got two things that are happening. Number one, you're going to bomb the gas refinery. Number two is we want those fighters that are hurting our troops to come and try to stop you. It'll ease them, and it will also knock out their refinery and hopefully down some of their fighters.
So on the ground, what's going on? I mean, are you aware of what's happening on the ground?
Oh, yes. Tanks were faced right up to the line, but they didn't have the necessary gas to move forward, and nobody could see anything up there.
German tanks?
German tanks. We had gas, but they didn't.
So they were making a push to get the...
That's the push. That's the push. Battle of the Bulge. All along there.
Tell me about what your involvement was from the air during that time and what you did during the battle.
I have a list. For the next 7 days, we did it.
Tell me what you did.
I'm sorry?
You tell me. I can read that later, but tell me on the camera what you did. What you...
Well, we went after oil refineries, all of oil refineries. I did 3 days in a row. Then we hit Odertal, and we had problems. That plane was shot. Took them a month to fix it up. But the next day, they said, we got another plane for you. We went. And the crew by this time was really like this. So they said, take a couple of days off, and then 3 more day after day after day. But it was rough.
Tell me about how the weather had a factor in the air or on the ground during this time.
We were okay. We ran into a lot of fog, but it was a little here and a little there because we weren't bombing right at that point. We were bombing and where their gasoline was being refined. That was the key. You can have a tank, you can have a plane, you can have motorcycles, you can have cars, but if they don't have gas, you got them. So get the gas. And Ploesti, all these things are get the gas, get the gas, get the gas, because they can't move without it. Ball bearings also. We went after ball bearings because you can build all the stuff around it, but if you don't have any ball bearings, fine, stay right there.
I talked to a guy yesterday or the day before, flew C-47s pretty low, and he could see the tracks of Patton's army or tanks making their way. He was actually describing the movement from the air. Of course, he's flying a lot lower probably than you, but could you see anything up above that would give you an indication that there's the Germans, there's the Americans, they're making progress or anything like that?
No. Our lead plane, we were all covered together, flying wingtip to wingtip. I was looking out with my wheel. I had my hand on the, okay, and this is the wheel. And I'm like this, looking at his wing, and that's all I ever saw. because if I tipped him, both of us were gone, and maybe the guys behind us. So I was always just up and like this, touchy. I saw guys that couldn't lift their arm afterwards. Because we were up there 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, and we were doing the same goddamn thing. Oh, excuse me.
Well, so you said you couldn't lift your arms?
Well, you're so sore, you're doing one thing all day long for 9 hours.
Well, now you're bombing these oil refineries. I mean, are you
only bombing?
Okay, can you tell if you struck your targets? How do you know, I mean, that you were successful?
We didn't know till the next day.
Okay.
Because here's the target. We dropped our bombs back here, and they just continued to go. Well, man, the minute my bombardier said, "Bombs away," we're getting the heck out of there. So there would be a little grouping and get back in together again, because everybody, the minute the guy said, "It's on," we turned and got out of that box if we could. The invisible box of flak.
Well, obviously you were successful in what you did, and us defeating the Germans at that point or driving them back into Germany or whatever we were doing. And,
in the Odertal where I got hit, the worst one of all, I can tell you about that because once we turned away from the target and started going back, I had a problem because I had leaking gas. I was on 3 engines, so I knew I had to stay with them as long as I could, but I also was getting a lot of power here. The big thing was, can we get over the Alps to get over the Adriatic Sea and to get back to home? So once we got away from where I knew fighters were in, we started throwing everything out that we could to lessen the weight. And I mean, all the ammunition, all the guns, everything went. And everybody was saying, "Is that enough? Are we going to make it?" Because I had out of the group at that time. They were on their way, and I was trying like mad to get rid of everything I could. Another concern was number 3 engine handled all the hydraulics, and that meant no tail or no wheels going down and no brakes, because you would land, at 100 and some miles an hour and no brakes. But they told us always, one push, and there was enough in the lines for one brake hold. And don't let up, because if you let up, you got nothing left. I said to the guys, they told us, everybody go to the rear of the plane. 2 guys with parachutes out the side engine, side of the plane. And so we landed as slow as we could, keeping it like this. And we made it. We made it.
so 2 guys only had parachutes? Why only 2?
Well, they threw the parachutes out so it would catch, you see the cars now have speed cars.
I understand that now.
Yeah.
Okay, so they didn't bail out. They just used that.
They didn't bail out. No, they may have wanted to.
You landed, you hit the brake once and stay on it?
And just then nose ease down. You have to watch because the wheel up there is only like that. You could just go like that.
I've got a question off the subject. We'll get right back on it though. When the big jets today land, even back in World War II, it looks like such a small tire, small assembly that comes down. I mean, how much force can that take? More than we think, huh? I mean,
a lot.
So it looks small, but it's used all the time. But they keep doing it.
Yeah.
amazing to me. It's just flying is amazing to me. So, go ahead.
Well, we only had two wheels and a little one up front.
Okay. Yeah. Combat. As a young man, did you think young men feel invincible in combat? Like nothing can happen to me? Or how did you guys feel at that time? Or did you have a rude awakening that you could get killed doing this? Or I mean,
Interesting you should say that, because the first time I took up my own crew, well, let me say that the first 4 or 5 missions, I was the co-pilot with a pilot that had been there. He knew what the story was. He was feeding me. I was trying to feed him. And so the first time I took my own crew out, by the way, we had heated suits, heated boots, heated gloves, heated underwear, heated goggles, because it's 40, 50 below zero up there, and we're wide open on my side. So I said to the crew, I don't know what religion you are, but there's 10 of us here, and I'm just going to stand still for a minute and then just do it. If anybody wants to join me, fine. If not, crawl in. That was fine. Everybody stood with me. Next day, and we came back. Next day, I noticed the crew next door had joined us. I used to never said a word. I just closed my eyes for a few seconds, and next thing I knew, there was 35 guys there. But now, back to the point. My feeling was, if there is a force of good, and they had taken good care of me down here, there probably is no less good up there. And so I should not worry about up there any more than I do down here. And that took me through.
so are you a religious man? I mean, were you praying? I mean, you believe in God? I mean,
Yeah,
did that get you through the hard times?
yes. I held on to that.
Well, you have to. I mean, I don't know how else. I know you're trained to a point, but still,
Yeah.
beyond that, it's like, that's a great story.
Well, the pilot is a leader. He's got 9 other guys, and those are his men. If I goof, 10 of us are going out. So there's a lot of, I don't know how to say it, but I just had to take care of everybody, and they took care of themselves and took care of me. We were a team, but you're the leader, and you do it.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Oh, you have a feeling, if I goof, I've killed 9 guys. Yeah.
Did you lose friends or crews that you knew, and then you got back on the ground? And
We were fortunate. I had a couple of guys get hit, but it wasn't anything really bad.
Which Air Force or division what was the name of the division you're with? Or the Corps, the company, battalion,
Okay,
fire group,
the
bomber group?
15th Air Force was in Italy. Both of the 8th Air Force was in London, in Britain. They had it cozy. They had wood barracks and so on. They could go to movies, they could do this, they could do that. When we landed in Italy, we went through mud like that to get to our tent. And that's the way it stayed. And there was no movies, there was no nothing. You just were there. That's the 15th Air Force. But they were needed because the 8th Air Force could not go as far east, so they wanted us there. We took care of the eastern part, they took part of the western part.
What was your rank?
I was a second lieutenant going in, first lieutenant going out.
Are these memories still fresh in your mind, Don, after all these years, or is it fading?
I love it. Anything that's military, I jump on. Right?
Tell them about watching the movie.
Hmm?
Tell them about watching the movie. What you did.
I'm sorry. Say it loud.
When you were watching a movie. And
Oh.
So you wanted to know if it's still with them.
One night, we were both sitting in bed. She was reading, I was watching TV, and sure enough, here came an airplane deal. And they were getting into trouble. And all of a sudden she said, "Don, what are you sniffling for? You're panting, your water's coming down your, what's the matter?" I said, that's the one time that really, really hit me. I guarded myself after that.
Well, it's amazing talking to so many people that fought on the ground, on the sea, in the air. It's a joint effort by everybody, obviously. And you mentioned the camaraderie. It was you guys were close as a group.
Oh yes, oh yes. They had their tent, 6 of them, 4 of us in our tent, the officers, and we always went over there and we were talking. There wasn't anything else to do in Italy in the mud. We were out in the old wheat field.
I don't hear a whole lot in all my interviews about the German Luftwaffe. I mean, did you encounter any Messerschmitts or any fighters? Or...
Oh yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the German Air Force.
Well, they began to, I was fortunate in that after we landed there in September, I would say around December, January, they didn't have the gas anymore. So we were not bothered by the fighters after that. Occasionally, yes, but that's scary. But we had Tuskegee air guys. Now what they did, they were 5,000 to 10,000 feet above us, looking down, because they were not only guarding our 28, there was another 28 over here, another 28 over here. And I could hear them. Somebody over here said, "Hey, they're coming at us." They said, "All right, we'll be right there." And you could just see them going over there. But over that, other than that, I never did see them.
What kind of aircrafts did they fly?
P-51s.
And why was that a black group? What was the significance of them being an all black? The Tuskegee Airmen? Why black? I mean, what was the purpose of that?
Early war, blacks worked in the kitchens. And there was an active group said, "No, we want to fly. We want to do other things." And, there's a movie out on it, Tuskegee. And so I never did see one, never talked to one, except on the telephone. "Hey, come on down, I'll feel better." In some of the stuff I brought, one of the guys said, "I feel for you. You were," because he said, "I see you from up here. I see the 7 of you, and then I see a lot of smoke, and then there's only 5 of you. I'm glad I'm up here."
So they were basically fighter escort when you guys...
Fighter escort, to a degree. In the early days, when there was a lot of fighters coming at us, we didn't have that same, because they couldn't, what the Germans did, they fooled us. What they did, our P-51s, I think it's 51s, the fighters could only go so far. But we were hitting targets 800 miles away, 900 miles away, and they could only go with us up to about 400 to 500, and they had to turn around. So the Germans just said, very easy, they would be noticed at about the 300, 400 mile range, the fighters would drop their air tanks because they couldn't fight with the air tanks. And then the Germans would turn around and go back and wait for us. And our guards were on the way back because they're out of gas or losing gas.
Were these the good old days, Don? I mean, is it a good memory?
Yes, because I had warm relationships with so many. What really, talking about relationships, in the morning, the 28 that were in my squadron, 7 planes, 4 officers, so the 28 of us would go have our breakfast and the crew would go over here. Now we're talking about 4:30 in the morning. And what really hurt was you had breakfast with 28 guys, and then when you came home after 8 or 9 hours and got all the stuff off and you want to go in for dinner, and there isn't 28 anymore. There's 4 guys or 8 guys not missing. You got to a point where you didn't get too chummy with anybody because it was too much for you when you were with him and had breakfast with him and you knew he was never coming back. Those are toughies. So you kind of just did your thing.
Do you think about these men that were lost? I mean, what does Veterans Day mean to you? Is that a special time for you?
Oh yeah, you just sit and think about it, but you do it often. Because anything military, I jump.
You ever walk through a military cemetery?
Oh yes.
What do you think about when you see all the crosses and markers? I mean, what do you think about?
We were the wife and 4 kids, and we were in England and France, and we were going to the French
American Cemetery?
American Cemetery. On the way, they asked me some questions about, I hadn't said too much. And the next thing I know, I was bawling like a baby. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. We all were.
Everybody. But that it's so beautiful. They're all in a nice lean line.
In my first film on D-Day, which they showed here September 10th on PBS, it shows, I do a couple of segments from the cemetery and how immaculate that cemetery is.
Beautiful.
And just a few hundred yards away, all those young men were dying at Omaha Beach.
Right down the way.
So it's very chilling. And even talking to you about it now, I was very moved. I've been there 3 times, and but yeah, I just.
Tell them about the hole in the plane.
The which?
The hole in the nose of the plane.
You have to talk louder.
The hole in the nose of the plane.
Oh, yes. Once I land, pilot, co-pilot, engineer. Engineer's down, standing up. Who, by the way, wet his pants every time we got on target. But everybody leaves, and I'm sitting there with the co-pilot, filling out the form and so on and so on. All of a sudden, my land crew sergeant came up. He was going like this. He was standing where my engineer always stood. I said, "What are you doing up here? You're not supposed to be up here." We're laughing. He said, "The front part of your plane has been ripped, and it's about 10 feet, and it's just aluminum. You could put your hands through it." And he said, "The flak must have gone in to your plane, and it's got to be right underneath you there." So I said, "Well, I don't see any." I said, "I know the air was coming in, but that's, who knows?" So I went in with the crew, take off your clothes, take off the jacket, take off the metal flight jacket, take off, the whatever. pull my pants down, and here, resting next to my knee, was a piece of flak, just like that. And I had done all right up until that time, and that's when I wiggled just about like I wiggle now. That close. That close. Thank you.
Is there an adrenaline rush flying? Is it boring once you get at a cruising altitude, or is it just an excitement all the time? And where does the fear come in during these missions?
It's just constant from the time you see the first one coming toward you, or when we turn on target and you see nothing but just big puffs, black puffs, black puff, black puffs. The term is, it's so heavy you could walk on it. And that's when he peed, and that's when all of us said, okay, here we go. You see, the fighters could go this way, that way. Once we hit on what we call the target, you had to go. You don't move, you don't do anything. You're just the victim.
Who's lining up the sights? The navigator? I mean, who's the bombardier? Who's doing the actual lining up of you looking through something? And
Norden bomb sight, and it actually, they changed it. It used to be in every plane. It still is, but it's not used by every plane. The lead pilot and the lead bombardier who was running there. Now, this Norden bomb sight was hooked up to me. When I was on a plane, if I was the leader, I would get on the target probably 20 miles away. At that point, I would say to the navigator, do you have the target in sight? They had things that they would tell them they're coming up. At that point, I would turn on to an automatic. He would run the plane up and down and sideways. And he was doing it with this little Norden bomb sight. And what they did was, instead of having all 7 guys in my little group do this, number 1 did it, and when his bombs dropped off, my bombardier very forcefully went click, 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 bombs away, okay?
out of there.
Yeah. So they put good people up front, and the rest of us, I led them a couple of times, that is scary, because you weren't running year 7 or year 10, you were running 28.
You think our country, Don, is forgetting about what you guys fought for in World War II? Are we losing what we fought for in World War II in our country?
I think there was so many Vietnam and Korea and all of those. I think a lot of it, where we're living, there aren't many World War II people, and they've got their own background.
Do you think it's important that we remember these things?
Oh, of course.
Tell me why. Why do you think that's important?
Because it's losing good people, young people dying, and it's not necessary. We won't go into what's happening today, but it's the same way. I feel for these guys.
Well, I mean, are we forgetting what the sacrifices of World War II? Are we forgetting the freedoms that we've gained through the sacrifices? Or is our country?
I think a lot of people are taking it for granted, just taking it for granted. It scares me.
What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom, you mean from fighting?
Well, just as an American citizen living in a country that's free.
Loving thy neighbor, doing good things, helping people, being aware of other people's feelings.
What about the price for freedom, the cost for our freedoms? What would you tell a young person today who's born in a free country, who takes its freedoms for granted, knows nothing about the sacrifices of war? How would you communicate to them about the cost or the price for freedom?
I would talk to them softly, but I would certainly take them aside and talk.
You must know that.
If in fact, because I've done it to hundreds and hundreds of people. I was a principal of schools, and I had things in my office. And so they would come in, I'd show them my 4-engine plane, and we would talk.
Good. What does the American flag mean and represent to you as a veteran?
Everything. America, a great, great country. That's our symbol.
Are you proud that you're a World War II veteran?
You better believe it. I'm proud to be here. Yes,
Do people thank you for your service?
absolutely.
How does that make you feel?
Good? Yes.
You've got children?
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
I had 3 boys, and I was divorced. And I married this beautiful lady, and she had 2 boys and a daughter. So I've been with, 5 boys and a girl.
What do you want your family to remember about you someday when you're gone?
That I was loving to them and to others. And I've tried.
Hopefully that day won't come too soon, but
Well, I'm 86. I'm going to be at least 100.
there you go.
You're talking about the Distinguished Flying Cross?
Yeah,
Oh.
Distinguished Flying Cross. Tell me about that.
Well, I got that at Dear Odertal.
How was that awarded? What's the citation for that?
I've got it with me for you.
Tell me.
What they do is somebody in the head knew what I had gone through and how I brought the plane back and how,
So the experience you told me.
yeah,
Okay, got
that's
you.
right, based on that.
That's good. That's good.
Then from time to time, you would do different things here and different things there, go on special missions, and you get the what?
The air medal?
Medal, and I got 4 of those from time to time. I got those too. You can see those.
Well, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have you do one more thing. We'll finish the interview. Then I'm going to take some pictures of us with this camera, and then I'll look at what you have. But
Okay.
At the end of my interviews, I always have the veteran give me a salute into the camera. So when I tell you to, that was a good practice one. When I tell you, I want you to look into the camera and give me a salute, okay?
Yes.
Okay, look right into the camera. Go ahead.